All right, guys, welcome to quick talk today about NSX PowerOps. It's a new tool that was launched in September 2017 at VMworld 2017. Well, I shouldn't say new tool, it's been a year. It's almost an anniversary time, and we're releasing a new version 2.5 at VMworld 2018. Net 1642 BU if you want to join or search for that session for its recording. All right, so um, the base start is just to get an overview of the project, nsx-powerops.com or vcdx248, which is my blog. It has all this stuff about the tool, what it does, and it also has sample files that you can click and have a look at how the environment documentation is gonna look like for you guys. There's also videos and a lot of other things. Then to get to the tool, you can get to over to the GitHub site, and this is where you can go and download the tools. All you need to do is clone, download the zip file, and just download it. Once it's downloaded, one key thing is don't forget to go to properties and unblock it, because Windows may block the script depending on your machine's settings. Uh, there's a step-by-step install guide available, which where we have a summarized way of talking about the tool and a detailed way as well. The base requirements are very simple: a Windows VM with PowerShell 5.1, PowerCLI 6.5, or later installed. You need a 64-bit Excel. Visio is optional on the machine, but if you don't, then you can generate the visual from a different machine as well. The VM needs to have access to NSX Manager and vCenter. Pretty simple. And this blog has details about everything that you need to know about installation. And towards the bottom, we also have a section on troubleshooting. So any issues that we hear about, we try to document them in here, so you have a way to quickly resolve these. So if you run into any issues, this is a perfect place to come and have a look at first. Okay, so now let's go ahead and look at our download. So now we can extract it. I'm just gonna extract it in downloads. So it's easy for me. I'm gonna put it in here, and this is the file that we got. All right. All right, now as let's go in here. These are the files that get generated. Let's go ahead and start. So these are the files. All I do is NSX PowerOps PS1. And I'm in. So I already have the dependencies installed on these machine. So it says installed, but if I didn't, then it would give me an option to hit one and install. So you need internet connectivity to do that. If you don't have internet, then you need to download the modules on a different machine and bring them over. You can look at our documentation that walks you through that. So in here you have the menu. So if I have the dependencies already installed, it's grayed out. But if I didn't have the dependencies installed, it won't be grayed out, and I will have the opportunity to hit one and do the install. But right now, let's go ahead and do the connection profile. So essentially, as you can see, I'm not connected to any environment yet. So let me hit 2 and create a connection profile. A connection profile is very simple, a way of saying that what are the environments that I want to connect to. And if you have multiple environment, we don't want you put the credentials every time. It's a lot of typing, I guess. You obviously need to have access. All right. Okay. This is the profile name I want to give. I want to save this to the disk. I need some plugins like NSX controller stuff does need SSH, so I want to save that information. For ESXi host, there's one health check for DFW heap test that requires SSH, so I'm going to give it that information. I can enable email, so I am gonna hit yes, and I can say, hey, username at mail.com is where I want the emails to come. So I can say, hey, username at email is where I want it to be to come from, and I can also say, hey, this is the destination. Let's say mailserver.mail.com or whatever your mail server is. And if there's a username that's required, you can give that information. I want to create this as a default connection profile, so I can hit yes and go away with that. And it created a connection. Now I can come in here, I can create another connection profile, and I can hit one and then go through the whole process and just have multiple connection profiles, and I can set which one is the default. Once the tool is run, it always connects to the default by automatically. So as you can see now that I am connected to to the uh, profile that I just created already. All right. So X to go back. Let's say, for schedule task is to do the scheduled run of documentation. I can hit one and say, hey, for this one, I want a scheduled run, and this needs the password from the machine that I'm on right now to be able to create the schedule task, and now it's created. All right, so let's go back to the main stuff that we're here to talk about today, which is the documentation and health checks. So let's go number 4. So number 4 is, as you can see, there are 3 types of documentation: environment documentation, networking documentation, and security documentation. The environment documentation documents all NSX components, ESXi host information, and the routing tables of the ESXi host. Then you have the networking where we create a visual diagram for you automatically. Then you have the routing documentation created, load balancing, and distributor firewall. So the small and large environment is essentially same script, but in the small environment, there are 3 optional items that we also capture, which are the resultant of the security group membership, the security tag membership, and the IPs of all the VMs. In large environment we don't there's no harm in running this one number 7 in any environment. Is just going to take longer. So if you don't need that information every time, then you can just hit do the number 8. By default, all the information is saved in the report directory. So if I go in here, and this is a report directory where everything that I do would get placed, and this is the folder that gets created every time. So every time you'll have a folder. So let me go ahead and run something here. So for example, I'll do the Visio. So if I hit number 4, it's going to automatically gather all the information that it needs, and it's going to start creating a Visio file for me, right? So let's see. In a minute or so, you'll start seeing the file. So let me just so that's a file that just got created. So let me open the file. Actually, I have this open, so I'll just open this one to cut the time. So as you can see that it has all the information about your environment, how many edges you have, what port groups are they connected to, how many distributed routers you have, how many logical switches and whatnot. Another key thing here is that if you right click on the edges and go to data and shape data, you will see that the config file is there. So this is the config file of your entire edge configuration. So essentially, you can use this config file to redeploy the entire edge because it has all the information that you need to create the edge. So this is not just a Visio, but in a way it is also a backup of your edge configuration per se. All right, so I can go back in here and say, for example, I can hit number 5, and it's gonna start documenting all of the routing information, and so on and so forth. So you get the idea of how to use the tool. And this video, I don't want to go into details of the output, but the idea here is to just show you guys what are the different things that the tool's gonna generate for you or find or document for you. and how it's going to get documented. So in here, the files are going to come, and also if you can, as you can see, I can also hit number one and just I come back after 10 minutes, and all of the outputs should be saved and available for me once they are done. We also document the health check results in the file. So once we get there, I'll show it to you. And as you can see now that the documentation is complete. And if I go in here, I have the routing document already created and available for me. And in the routing document, in the top, you have the desired state. This is all the configuration, let's say BGP, OSPF, routing, global routing, static routing, all that config. And the bottom piece of that is the routing table. So as you can see, what are the BGP, the IP route, the BGP table, the BGP neighbor table, OSPF neighbor table, all that information is documented in here. And we also document the commands, the central CLI commands that you can use to actually get this information if you needed it again. All right, so I can run, a lot of other stuff in here and show you guys. I'd love to talk about some of them, but let's keep it short right now. Let's hop over to the health check menu. So I can go into health check menu. Health check menu is divided into three pieces: non-interactive, interactive, and beta health checks. So non-interactive are the one that just they don't require any user input. Interactive ones do require user input. So without running all the tests, for example, I can say, NSX connectivity test shows, if NSX manager is connected to the vCenter properly or not. NSX manager is running and all the services that are supposed to be running. For example, I hit 2, it's just going to check that and tell me what's good and what's bad. In my environment, because it's a lab, I may have it looks like my inventory update between the vCenter and NSX are not up to date, and for a while it has not been updated. So it's probably something that I need to go look into. Then I can go into, for example, let's check web version, and this test is gonna go and check on each ESXi host if the right version of web is there or not. So it will check NSX Manager and check what version is running, and then it will look on all the hosts. So in my environment, I did have not upgraded the NSX webs on all the hosts, right? So because of that, as you can see, there are certain hosts where it is saying that the right version of WIPs are not installed, but on one of the hosts that this is proper. And we check there are two tests, one which checks each individual host, and then at the end it checks if all the hosts have the right WIP version or not. All right, so I can go back and run some of the other tests. For example, like in this non-interactive test, which is VTAP to VTAP. What this guy does is it goes and checks if it pings from each VTAP on each ESXi host to each VTAP on all the other hosts with the appropriate number, and it also appropriate MTU, and it also supports cross site. So if you have cross VC configuration, for example, in here I have a cross VC configuration, it detects that, and then it asks me, hey, do you want to run a cross VC ping test or not? And right now I don't want to do that. What MTU do you want to test? 1572 for a 1600 byte packet. Do you want to run test from one host or all hosts? So let me say all hosts because I have a very small environment. So what it's going to do is we're going to connect to each ESXi host, no SSH. We connect to each ESXi host and we initiate a ping from each ESXi host, each VTAP, into all the other ESXi hosts and their VTAPs. And then we ping that, and then we create a Excel file that talks about how many pings were made and how many were successful or how many failed. So all of that information is documented and saved. So as you can see here, if I go back, all the tests that I'm running, the output of the tests are being saved in here in XML files. So if you want to refer back to what was the result, you have a document about the test that was run. All right, now this is done. As you can see, a new file just popped in. I can open it, and as you can see that there were 36 tests done, all were successful. There are no failures. If there's a failure, it documents that from which host, from which VMK and IP, to what IP on one VMK on which host there was a failure. And all the raw outputs of the ping tests are also documented in here for you. All right, so that was a quick overview of the tool for you. Feel free to run all the different health checks and let us know what you think about it. Thanks for joining today. Take care. Bye.